Hello and welcome to my channel. Hopefully you have watched my previous videos. If you haven't, don't worry. My previous video kind of gave it in a nutshell into that I am relaunching this channel as I haven't launched videos in 2 years. And what I've decided to do is that every single month I am hoping to launch a video, and hopefully it has some kind of resonance with you if you are watching, if you are a teacher, towards what is happening in the school calendar year. And this first video I wanted to launch is all about those first few week reflections, and for me, how I survive the new upcoming year and how I stay organised. The first few weeks of any school year I find the most daunting, and I don't think I am alone with this. You've just come off your 6-week holiday where you've relaxed, you might have been planning for the new year, but it's almost like, and I've experienced this every single time, that I kind of step into the classroom and I have a moment of going, how do I teach? Because you've had such a long gap since the last time that you stepped foot into a classroom with pupils sat in front of you. For myself, I teach several different subjects. My main two subjects, well, my main subject is drama, my second subject is media, and I also teach other lessons. So for me, it's quite daunting thinking about, I haven't just got one core lesson to think about, but also lots of different subjects, and within that, lots of different year groups and lots of different classes. So the first thing that I always say to myself, and what I'd advise if you are new teachers, is that don't expect to get to know your new classes within the first week. It takes time. It might be that you have some classes that you might seem to click with, or get to know what they're like within the first few weeks. It might be some classes it takes longer than that, and it depends obviously how often you see classes. My A-level classes I see at least 4 times a fortnight, usually 5 times a fortnight. My GCSE classes are the same, 5 times a fortnight. However, my Key Stage 3 classes I only see once a fortnight. So obviously you've got to be fair with yourself depending on how often you see your classes. And every teacher's different. If you are maybe a core subject in secondary or in primary and you're seeing the same kids a lot, it might come a lot quicker to you than others based on how well you get to know your kids early on. But don't put the pressure on yourself to feel like I have got to know this class inside and out within the first week. However, the most important thing to identify, and I do this before I introduce myself to any class, is that if there is any data that you are able to access, use it. For me, I use that data when creating seating plans. And I don't just mean about data about the child. Data for me comes towards maybe asking different teachers what that child is like. For example, with a drama GCSE class, we tend to sit down as a department, ask if other teachers have other different strategies or responses towards what this individual child needs and how they have been able to support them if I haven't taught them before. And that's one thing that I would recommend doing, that even before you even meet the class, do your homework, try to do your research to the best that you can. Now obviously that's easier said than done. If you are like me, I have year 7 classes, or if you're in primary and you're teaching very, very early years. However, just try to get and use any data you can to help prepare yourself. The second thing that I think is the best thing to reassure yourself with in those first few weeks is that you are a human being, and the kids, the first week, the kids are still in holiday mode, as in they are still a bit, oh gosh, I've got to, I can't just go to the toilet whenever I want, and oh my gosh, I've got to sit in a class and actually write things down, and they've had 6 weeks like you have that they haven't been doing that. So try to be fair with yourself. My top tip is to slowly introduce stuff. Now each to their own. It might be that you want to hit head on straight away with loads of new content straight from the get-go. I've done that and it can work. However, when you don't know your classes, like I previously said, getting to know your classes is the most important thing. I remember a really wise message I was told by one of my mentors when I was training is that the behaviour in the classroom is the most important thing before you start teaching them the lesson. And that comes with as well getting to know your classes. So don't feel afraid if you spend the first lesson that you don't get through a lot of content, because you're getting to know these kids. That is absolutely fine. So try to be fair on yourself with the expectations that you have within the first few weeks, especially the first week or two in regards to content. If you are not seeing classes regularly, or even if you're seeing them regularly, getting them back into routine, not only the kids but yourself, is something that is going to take time. One of the third things that's really important, and I am trying to do this even more, is to learn to take a break. Now I'm hoping to do another video based on mental health, winding down, my kind of work, home lifestyle boundaries that I have. And I'm hoping to relaunch this maybe in the next few weeks. So if you are interested in that, please let me know. It's something that I really want to talk about. But linked towards that, make sure that you are giving yourself a break. The worst thing to do, and I've done this myself, is that I've put so much pressure on myself when starting a new year, doing too much, because you're putting a high expectation on yourself. Teaching is such a difficult and demanding profession that you've got to be fair with yourself. I myself am trying to develop this, and I'm not an expert in this, but this is something that I keep quoting and saying to myself all the time. Don't expect to be perfect. You shouldn't be working every single hour of every single day and not resting. If you don't rest, you're not going to be good in that classroom. I've been there when I'm sat there and I'm going, you haven't been sleeping properly. You didn't take that Saturday to unwind, because mentally at the start of the year, you need to prepare yourself. As what I mean by that is that you need to give yourself time to get back into routines, but also the year is going to be a roller coaster. So you don't want to start yourself off being right at the top of that roller coaster, because then where are you going to go? Give yourself that break when you can. Some people that might be on weekends, some people it might be weekdays and an evening, but give yourselves breaks when you can. Another thing that's really important, and obviously it sounds very cliche, is get yourself back into the routine as quickly as possible. And I know that might contradict one of the first statements that I was talking about, that it takes time, but what I mean is thinking about, for example, sleeping patterns. Sounds really condescending, but getting yourself back into a sleeping pattern, an eating pattern, even a toilet pattern. I'm sorry, you're in a profession that you can't just go to the toilet when you want. If you're doing that early on, and try to stick at it maybe on a weekend, maybe less the toilet one, but I try to on a weekend stick as best as I can most of the time to a sleeping pattern. Now of course have a line. I'm not saying that I'm going to be jumping out of bed at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, but what I've started to do is that even on a Saturday and Sunday, I'm saying to myself to have a reasonable lie-in, but not to be sleeping in bed all day, because then I'll get to Monday and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I've got to wake up at 6 a.m. Obviously having those breaks and having those weekends to do what you want, But try to maybe stick into a routine in the first few weeks, even on those weekends. It can really help you out with just getting yourself back into your routine. Another thing that's really important is something that is talked a lot about. I talked about behaviour a few minutes ago, but getting your standards early on and knowing your standards and sticking to your standards and your own expectations in the classroom. I'll be really honest in a reflection that in my NQT year, I think I could have been more strict with myself with sticking to my standards. Not that necessarily I let them slip, but not being afraid of being the teacher that I wanted to be from the get-go in regards to my behaviour management, in regards to my expectations, and in regards to my teacher persona. You might not find that straight away. When I was an NQT, I didn't. I thought I knew after my PGCE, and my teacher persona now is different to 2 years ago when I was starting off my NQT year. However, if you have certain expectations that you want to put in place in the classroom, let kids know. In all my first lessons, with whether that's year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I always spend, if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, or the whole lesson, going through the expectations that I have in the classroom, especially if you haven't seen this class before. So it might be that you have taken up a new GCSE class and you want to put your expectations in for what you expect in regards to, obviously every school will have it in regards to equipment and homework, but in your study, so in your subject, what you expect. It might be that you're taking over a class, say for example we have in Key Stage 3, that it might have been a year 8 class that somebody else had and now I'm taking them as they go into year 9. They need to know what my expectations are. My behavioural management strategies are going to be different to another teacher. How I might approach certain tasks might be different to a different teacher. And as long as kids know that early on, it's the best place to be, especially when it comes towards behaviour. Now most schools, I'm pretty sure every school has a behaviour policy, but pupils need to know your behaviour expectations in your classroom and how you speak to them to address that behaviour, but also that teacher-pupil rapport. That kind of is it for me with the top things that I can think of when preparing for the first 4 weeks. But the most important thing is to look after yourself. Look after yourself. Eat, sleep, rest. Remind yourself that you are doing the best you can, and smile. Because you are in this profession. So like I've said, I'm gonna hopefully do videos once a month. It might be that I start doing them more frequently than that, but obviously if you are on this channel, you know that how busy teachers get. It really helps me to know that if this video was useful. So whether that's a like or a comment, it really helps me to know, so I'm not just spending my weekends blarting into a camera. If there's any suggestions that you have yourself that maybe I haven't covered, please feel free to comment and share the suggestions. I'm not a guru. This is just my honest reflections as somebody in the teaching practice and somebody that is continuing to be a teacher that I didn't think that I ever saw perhaps online. And as always, please, if there's anything that you would like to know or any questions, I have already received some questions. So it's not that I'm not answering those questions right now. I'm thinking of when to answer those questions in detail on a video, or if not, I am trying my best to respond to questions that I'll put in the comments below. Apart from that, I hope you have had a wonderful first month in the start of this new year, and I hope that you have a very enjoyable term. Until next time, thank you very much and see you soon. Goodbye.